It is week 4 of Around the League from UGAsports.com. I'm Dayne Young, joined by Brent Rollins from Pro Football Focus and the head coach, Jim Donnan, the College Football Hall of Famer. This is our show where we talk about every game in the SEC every week. We all work with and for UGAsports.com, but we keep an eye on what's going around the conference. And just being around Coach Donnan, I see how many connections he has just throughout all of college football. So he knows a lot of the things happening in the league and just has that coach's eye. Same thing that Brent has when he watches football, something I don't have, but it's something that I want to make sure that it gets across on these shows. It's why we do it. And we do it also with the help of ASW Distillery and our friends at Connor Grading and Landscaping. We'll talk about them in just a few minutes. The first game that I think is the marquee game of the SEC, even though it's not where College Game Day is, I think it's Arkansas versus Texas A&M, that one in Dallas, Brent. And this is one for Arkansas. You kind of change the complexion of the West if you find a way to win it. What's your early read on this game?
Well, it has implications for what College Game Day will be next week. Because if Arkansas goes and gets this dub, I would bet Game Day is going to Fayetteville for Alabama, Arkansas next week. But it's kind of what gives in this game. Arkansas has given up at least 24 points in every game, even to Missouri State a week ago. And then
Bobby Petrino was doing a job interview, though. He saw Auburn coming open, and he's like, let me take my national spotlight with Missouri State.
He definitely did. And then A&M, who's like Jimbo and his offense is kind of like the anti-Todd Monken. They've not evolved at all. It's still sort of archaic in terms of what they do. And they've only scored over 17 once, and that was against Sam Houston State. So what gives, and I do agree that this is the biggest game and this has the biggest implications sort of moving forward.
No question about it. It's at a neutral site, so to speak, playing at Jerry World. But here's the deal. Out of the last 10 times they played, A&M won 9. Arkansas finally beat them last year to get over the hump. There were some inexplicable losses there when Brett Bielema was the coach. They had them down, but they found a way to lose it. But, I think this game is going to be one that I always look for when people are playing tight. I mean, they're playing not to lose. That's what it looked to me like A&M last week. They were on eggshells. Not throwing the ball down the field, protecting the ball, had tremendous kicking game, pinned Miami back inside the 20, 10 of the several punts at least 3 times inside the 10. And then you got the big play guy, Arcane, who can pronounce that for me, Brent. How you pronounce it?
A-Chain.
Who can really, hurt you leading the country in kick returns. So they're using their special teams, and now they're going with Max at quarterback. I wish they'd take the reins off him a little bit and let him go throw the ball down the field. Defensively, they gave up 27 or 29 first downs, but no touchdowns. So bend and don't break. The thing that they're going to have a problem with this Arkansas team, from my perspective, is Arkansas can run the ball good enough right at you with Rocket Sanders and with the quarterback runs that Jefferson presents. But that's going to put tremendous pressure on their secondary to support the run, and they might get some easy throws to Hazelwood and Matt Landers. It's a question whether Matt Landers will catch it or not, but
he's only got only one drop thus far.
Okay, yeah, I knew you'd tell me, but this is a big game. This isn't like playing Southwest Missouri State. So here's the deal, too. What can Max Johnson do against that secondary that's been torched? I mean, A&M has not thrown the ball down the field, but, Barry Odom's team is good at sacking the quarterback. They got 17 sacks on the season. And this Sanders guy is just an unbelievable player, transferred from Alabama. But I think they got to throw the ball down the field to hurt this Arkansas defense, and maybe they'll take the wraps off their offense. That was a good analysis by Brent, saying it's kind of archaic, which it is. I mean, it reminds me of going to the movies when you're paying 9 cents to go. I mean, it's back in the old days stuff and old-timey offense.
It's a 7 p.m. kick. It's on ESPN. Texas A&M is a 2-point favorite. And to me, Brent, I look at this week in the SEC for these couple of marquee games. It's kind of that early season identity builder, because if things go wrong, you have to work so hard to kind of get things back on the rails for your season. If Texas A&M gets out of here, we talked about Arkansas, what potentially a win does for them. The opposite of Texas A&M is 2-2 to start the season and a loss to Arkansas and still having to go through the gauntlet of the West. It could get rough for Jimbo pretty quickly. I'm not saying in terms of his job. I'm just saying in terms of morale there.
Yes, very much so. And on the bright side for them, their loss is non-conference. Like it's App State. So, I think that's a good thing for them. But, Coach, the three names that you brought up just shows what the transfer portal can do for a football team. Drew Sanders, Jaden Hazelwood, Matt Landers, all three that are big-time players for Arkansas right now coming from other schools. And if you can be successful with the portal and get those guys that are plug and play, like Landers and Hazelwood right now, each have right around 13 catches, 150-plus yards, a couple touchdowns for Hazelwood. Like they're their playmakers in addition to Jefferson. But I think ultimately this comes down to which quarterback doesn't turn the football over. Max didn't have any turnover-worthy plays or any turnovers in the first game for A&M. KJ Jefferson doesn't have – I don't think he has any picks, but he has fumbles, and he's fumbled the ball a lot. So whichever quarterback takes care of the ball, I think that's who comes out with the victory in this game.
One of the things, too, you got to really counsel old Jefferson is the standpoint. You don't have to win this game by yourself. You don't have to run it when it looks like things are a little tight. Go on and throw the ball. He's had a tendency in big games to be very, very faulty.
Try to be Superman.
Yeah, do too much. Just mix it up. Let these other guys help you. Their O-line is solid. Their D-line is okay. I look for A&M to do what we did last year. Georgia run right at that 3-5 defense and try to go at the soft spots of it where they got a hole in it. And but the one thing that's always on your mind if you're coaching in the West is, okay, if we lose, we still got to play Alabama. You know what I mean? So it's on the horizon that hard to win with 2 losses because your head-to-head win against Alabama is a loss. So it's really like 3. So you get behind the sticks with Alabama, it's going to be hard to get in the playoffs. As far as playing for the SEC championship. And conversely, same thing with Tennessee and Kentucky, although Tennessee does have to play Alabama, Kentucky doesn't. But, those head-to-head losses to Georgia are like two losses because I don't see Georgia losing 2 times in the East. I mean, maybe. But so all of this is just philosophical, but 2 big games starting out here early in the year that had so many implications. And I think we're going to break down the Tennessee-Florida game next. And I'm going to tell you what, Brent, I'm interested to see what all you're going to have to say about it because I got so much I could take the whole show.
That's a 3:30 CBS kick. Tennessee favored by 10.5, Brent.
I mean, look at the quarterback play. It's hard not to focus on it. Like when you look at what Hendon Hooker has done at Tennessee since he's taken over as a starter, he has 37 touchdowns and just 3 picks since he's taken over playing for them. This season only has 1 turnover-worthy play versus Anthony Richardson, who's yet to throw a touchdown pass, yet to have a big-time throw, and has 6 turnover-worthy plays. Like 43.9 passing grade. It got worse after the South Florida game. They have to have production from him, and he has to kind of be Superman because Florida doesn't really have playmakers on the outside. And I think that's going to be, in Tennessee being at home and the tempo that they have, I think it's going to be too much for Florida.
Here's the thing, too, that I'd point out right off the bat. Game day there, Tennessee's about 12 months pregnant for a big win. Their fans have been waiting ever since Philip Fulmer was there. I mean, they have not gotten over the hump. They're 1-15 against Florida. They won 2 or 3 against Georgia. Haven't beaten Alabama, but they got a 3-headed monster out there at receiver that you got to work on. I mean, all of a sudden they get Brew McCoy in from Southern Cal, and then they've got Tillman and Hyatt out there. I mean, who are you going to defend? Who are you going to take over? Because all of a sudden you start playing the inside run, and one of these guys will run a bang 8 on you. That means a quick post, and all of a sudden you're behind the sticks either for a 20, 30-yard gain or a touchdown. So everybody's got to be on point, got to play exactly where you're supposed to because if you watch the game, just watch the large splits of the wide receivers. Comes from Baylor. That's where Heupel picked all this stuff up when Joe Don Finley came and coached with him at Missouri, and they put all that in. But their whole deal is to get in the lineup quick as fast as they can. And receivers, you line up anywhere you can. We're going to snap the ball. That's why they look like some really funky-looking formation sometimes. A guy could be a slot on the side of the field and run a crossing route, and he's into the boundary. He'll just come back there and stack behind the X, and they'll throw a quick screen to him. So you better be ready. Interesting fact here. The two best players beside that one great D lineman for Florida are Georgia Bulldogs. Kimber at corner, Cox at defensive end, and both of them are starting and playing well. Kimber had a pick 6 last week, and he left here because he didn't think he could play at Georgia. So around the league, we just keep talking about that's our name, but around the league, Georgia Bulldogs playing for everybody. Brini, Landers playing for Arkansas, these two for Florida.
Major Burns at LSU.
Got guys playing everywhere. But I think this game is going to be based on can Richardson not try to do everything and maybe get somebody to catch the ball. Otherwise, they're going to just play Richardson and say, "Hey, you can't beat us running the ball," and they're going to score a lot of points on this Florida defense. So Florida's got to find a way to manufacture some points. I don't feel sorry for them, but I think Florida's going in there with a shorter amount of bullets than what Tennessee's got.
You know, I love to do the schedule check. And for Tennessee, they need this game against Florida because after this, at LSU, Alabama, then they get UT Martin a little break, then Kentucky and Georgia. I mean, that could be an incredible run that puts them on a new plane, or it can be something that destroys your hope and what Heupel's built so far. That's a 6-game stretch that is rough.
Right, and we remember the fourth quarter at Alabama last year where they just threw the ball at will against them, and they're going to be playing them on Rocky Top too. I mean, they got 2 tough games that they're the home team, and then they got to go to Georgia, and Kentucky's always going to be a bloodbath game. I mean, they should have beaten Kentucky last year. They might have beaten them. I can't remember who won that game. It was something, a giveaway. One of them did, but. Here's the deal. Around the league, it's got a lot to talk about today, but all of a sudden, after these first 2, we don't have a lot to talk about. But I figured that my man Dayne can talk about our 2 sponsors, who I think our fans can really listen to them for that because they do a good job of their respective companies.
Yeah, let's get to them. Let's talk about our friends over at Connor Grading and Landscaping. Brent, I know you've had them at your house recently. Are they set to come back out and do some of the work that y'all discussed?
Once I pick what I want them to do, I got to pick. Like I'm picking between the various things of doing some of it, a little bit of it on my own just to get my boys busy. But other than that, yes, going to pick and let them roll here soon.
Well, if you need some good ideas.
I'm going to get him to come over here, and I got a drain issue that I need to get checked on around my deck. And I got to get the contact numbers you're going to put on here because they need to come check the old coach out.
Yeah, what you need to do, Coach, is go to connorgrading.com. And if you're in Brent's shoes, what I suggest is going to the gallery page and seeing some of the great photos of work that they've done already in Northeast Georgia. And it goes from it's in their name, the grading and landscaping. So whether it's moving earth or finding a way to kind of have a solution so water drains to a better spot in your yard, this is a really good time of year to do it because we have hit fall, my friends. When you wake up on Friday, there'll be a chill in the air, which means you're not cutting your grass quite as often. You can probably get a bit more work done and have it ready for not only your tailgating, but when next spring comes around, it'll be all set for you then. The folks at Connor Grading and Landscaping are really true professionals in what they do, and it's the customer service that makes them stand out. Brent, you've had them, like I keep mentioning it, you've had them at your house multiple times, and what you've told me is they're on time, they're quick, they have good ideas, and they let me go on my day. They don't give me some 6-hour window and say I'll be there in the middle of it somewhere.
100% correct.
So go check out connorgrading.com. Follow them on Instagram or check out their Facebook page, our friends at Connor Grading and Landscaping. They've been sponsors of Around the League since we've started doing this, essentially. So thanks to them for that. I want to get to Missouri and Auburn, Coach, because identity game, these are two teams in crises already. Auburn, a really tough loss to Penn State, didn't really look competitive in the second half. But Missouri also, we haven't seen much from them to think that they're going to be, a bowl contender at this point?
Yeah, when I used to work up at ESPN and we'd be in the green room waiting to go back on at halftime, and Reese Davis and Mark May and myself, and we had a couple games every week. We had one we called the pillow fight of the week, which was really the two worst teams in the country playing, which usually some teams from the East, like Massachusetts versus Connecticut or something. And then the Mayflower Bowl, which basically said whoever lost, the coach was going to probably have a Mayflower truck in his yard on Monday. So we're in that situation here with Drinkowitz is not quite as much in the hot seat as Harsin, but Harsin last week, that team looked totally inept trying to stop the run. Were terrible against the pass and offensively very ineffective. Other than that, they had a good game. But Penn State came in there and just routed them. I didn't think it would be anything near that. We talked about their road woes, but they got their young running back and of course the quarterback's a veteran guy. He's been up there longer than Stetson's been here, I think, and he really performed well. It's going to be a pressure-packed game because everybody's telling Harsin, you got to win. But you talk about a guy that's got some games coming up. I mean, look at who all he's got to play. And so I don't know if Finley's hurt. They say he's going to miss. If they put Anderson in there, they can run all those option plays. But he's prone to drop the ball, which if they start dropping the ball against Missouri, who knows what. Missouri can't score on anybody. They finally got someone. What's Abilene Christian? Is that Division II or what?
I honestly don't even know.
I don't think they're 1AA. I've never seen them play, but that had to be a game that was picked up for somebody called a bus station, and that team was driving through there or something. But they what was it, 30-something to 17? I mean,
yeah, 31-17.
But Missouri doesn't show me much. I mean, that's a bad statement because it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you just went to show me state. I mean, that was so dad joke of you, Coach.
Show me state. But seriously, Bulldogs got to go out there and play a night game next week, which is going to be hanging around all day and all that. But Auburn, what do you got in Auburn? Tell me something, Brent. You got something? Tell me. They got to have something.
It's not good. None of it's good. And then I think you called it the Mayflower game. Is this kind of like a loser leaves town match, like like with the coach part of it?
I think,
like you said, it's a struggle bus either way.
I think that train's already left the station for Auburn for multiple reasons. I mean, their AD situation too, but as Coach was saying with their schedule, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Western Kentucky, Alabama. So at what point in that?
Hey, seriously, Western Kentucky should have beaten Indiana. Just unbelievable, inexplicable at the end. They went for 2 and got it to overtime. The guy had I'm just going to tell you, the strong safety had a check when the guy goes in motion, blitz, because there's nobody to pick you up on a 2-point play. He took 2 steps. He was coming in there uncontested and then decided to drop off on his own and ended up being disaster. They kicked the field goal and beat them. But Western Kentucky plays Florida International this week. That'll be what I would say a condo pick. Take Western Kentucky and give up the 29.
Look at Coach with the picks
like
in here for the gambling folks. I love it.
Well, I will say, if you like quarterback play and you want to watch really good quarterback play, don't watch this game. It's been a struggle this is sort of, in terms of the conference, lower the bottom rung in terms of quarterback play. Like Auburn, their quarterbacks combined 58% completion, 2 touchdowns, 6 picks. It's not any better at Missouri with Cook. And then Abraham came in for a little bit against K-State and then threw 2 picks in like 3 or 4 plays. Like, it's just until you can, if you're going to be those teams where you're not the most talented team in the division as it is typically. You've got to get great quarterback play, and they're just not getting it at all.
And their quarterback is playing, starting for Indiana, the guy that started for Missouri last year.
Basil
lighting it up there. And then Indiana's quarterback goes out to Washington and just completely torches Coach Tucker's team. So as Brent so aptly put, the transfer portal can be really good to you. I mean, that's what the doctor ordered. Washington needed a quarterback. This guy that was a coordinator at Indiana is now the head coach out there at Washington, and he got that kid to transfer. I guess it wasn't anything wrong with it, but that kid beat Michigan State last year too as Indiana's quarterback. So when Brent was talking about, I think off the air, we were talking about what's Georgia going to do at quarterback. He told me, hey, sit tight and get a transfer guy, give you depth. Wouldn't a transfer quarterback like to come to Georgia after Bennett leaves and know you got all that supporting cast? Even Beck certainly and Vandergriff are here, but the transfer portal is where it's happening, man.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I thought I saw your mouth moving, so I bailed out of it for a second. Yeah, the thing with me for Auburn is I understand why they want to play Robbie Ashford. He gives them the mobility that TJ Finley does not. I'm stunned that Zach Calzada hasn't proven more in practice to give more reps. He's the only guy on that team that has beaten Alabama, and at some point you have to think, let's just throw him in there because it can't get much worse, at least in terms of passing the ball. Maybe he has movement issues, maybe there's protection issues, but in terms of throwing the football, it can't be much worse than what we've seen.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals where you got the coordinator there is from Boise, and Harsin had that stuff at Boise. They do 9 million things before the ball snapped and then either get a delay of game penalty or gain 2 yards. They waste more time before the ball snapped than anybody I've ever seen. That stuff worked out at Boise, but the SEC's caught up with it. And all that pre-snap movement hurts you when your quarterback can't call the play. And that's what's happened to Calzada. He doesn't understand that. But I'd have to, with his arm, which you think's pretty good, don't you, Brent? With his arm, I'd let him go back in there and just throw one, see if he could hit that eagle coming into the stadium or something. Just throw it up there in the air and let him run for it.
After all that, Auburn is 7-point favorite against Missouri. So as Brent said, that one could get sloppy quickly. Here's what we're going to do for our remaining games. I'm going to give you 2 sets of games, just clusters, and just tell me, I'll start with you, Coach. If anything in this cluster of games, I'll start with 3 first, just catches your attention. Kent State and Georgia. Georgia's a 45-point favorite at home at noon. Mississippi State coming off a disastrous fourth quarter in Baton Rouge, a 30-point favorite against Bowling Green. That's at 11 local time. And then Ole Miss is a 21.5-point favorite against Tulsa. Ole Miss 3-0, but I really don't know if we know anything about them based on their light schedule so far.
So what, I got 30 seconds on this? Is that what you want?
Whatever you want.
I guarantee you one thing, Kent State has a great chance of hitting this cover. That's a lot of points. We haven't seen a quarterback like we're going to face Saturday. He's probably among the top 3 we'll play against all year. They do a lot of the Baylor offense. They stress your star. They stress your money linebacker. They do a great job of really calling plays. They've got a veteran defense. And, everybody say, well, Georgia's so good and all that. We are good, but we're not going to constantly shut down good offensive team. This will be a good test for us to see what we'll do against Tennessee because they do a similar thing. As far as Mississippi State, I was disappointed in them last week. Bowling Green beat the Thundering Herd after they went out there and beat Notre Dame, and then their coach did so many interviews during the week he forgot to talk to the team about playing Bowling Green. And he got the ass beat in overtime. And then the other game, really impressed with the running game that Coach Kiffin's got. He's got transfers too, plus a true freshman that's running the rock. And, their schedule's set up to be 7-0. I think Brent told us a couple of weeks ago. Looks like that. Inconsistency at quarterback, but they played a Tech team that really is terrible. I mean, at this point, like 183-10 over their last 4 games against Power 5 teams. So you can't get too fired up about Ole Miss, about the way they destroyed them. But I think Mississippi State's got to figure out when you got to make a play, you got to make a play, and they didn't do it last week.
True. And I think the point you made about the Kent State quarterback coach, I think is the biggest point out of all three of those games. Outside of Mississippi, that was the worst game Mississippi State has played since they played Alabama last year. Ole Miss, I borderline felt sorry for Georgia Tech. Like that was –
No, don't feel sorry.
I mean, or Georgia Tech fans. Sorry, I should call it because that was – I mean, those guys were running untouched all game long. But anyway, the Kent State quarterback, Colin Schlee, 13 missed tackles forced as a runner. Big, physical kid. 8 missed tackles forced against Oklahoma. So the kid can make plays. And I think, like Coach said, he's very that Hendon Hooker, what you're going to see later in the year with Tennessee. Good preview for that for Georgia. That's it in those 3 games.
And the quarterback from 2 years ago is playing pro ball on the camp squad. He's on the practice squad. So this team knows what they're doing. Offense coordinator at Syracuse is now the head coach for Kent State, and that's where Nick Saban went to school. So you got to be careful about getting on Kent State too much. So Coach Saban get mad.
Kent State's head coach said that Georgia had the greatest collection of talent ever assembled on a football field, which I just loved that quote. It made me laugh so much.
Well, I will say,
was he looking at last year's tape or this year's? So.
There was a fascinating article. I hate to prop up another website, but on The Athletic from Andy Staples about Kent State and what their sort of previous athletic director had done to them. They're just playing these games from the money part of it. And like, look at what they've done this year. This is at Washington, at Oklahoma, now at Georgia. That's insane.
Well, the coach has got to put in his contract now that out of that $5 million that they're going to get between the 3, that the football team will get at least $200,000 to help their program instead of just the rowing team and some of those. I'm all for helping out those. Don't get me wrong. And Brent and Dayne know I'm for women's sports. I go watch them. Let's support them. And I'm for Olympic sports. But, 3 times against the top 15 team in 1 year, I know that Coach Lewis doesn't even scrimmage on Tuesday. He doesn't even let them wear pads during the week because of these games. So they'll start back. Here's the other point that I read in that article, and I think you aptly brought that up too. They've won their last 10 games at home.
I think Coach froze there for a second.
Yep.
We'll see if he comes back here. He had a really good point, though.
I agree.
Last 10 games at home. We'll stop it at that.
I agree.
I'm going to pull him from this for a second. He'll probably reset here. While he does, I do want to tell folks about our friends at ASW Distillery. So we told you that at Connor Grading and Landscaping, get your backyard set. I promise you, my back deck is my oasis, especially when this fall weather hits. And if you want yours to be the same, get your back deck set by Connor Grading and Landscaping. But then have your spirits, whatever you like. Bourbon tends to be my jam from ASW Distillery. This is the Fiddler Georgia Heartwood. And this is what my friend Chad Ralston up at ASW Distillery told me to try. He said, look, I've chatted with you a little bit. You told me some of the things that you like. Go try our Georgia Heartwood Fiddler Bourbon. I'm going to read their description from the website. The same foraged high wheat bourbon as our flagship Fiddler Unison, finished on the staves of Georgia oak that our distilling team has harvested and hand charred. The 45% wheat content is unique for bourbons, leading to sweet, smooth profile, and it is high proof. The notes caramel, maple, toffee, and clove. They have a few different kinds of bourbon. If gin is your jam, they have that as well. Also, if you are a vodka drinker, go check out ASW Distillery. You can find them, especially in the state of Georgia, wherever you buy your let's just say party goods. How about that? But then also, if you're out of state too, go and say, hey, I've heard these guys on Around the League at UGA Sports talk about ASW Distillery. They are distilled by dogs. 5 of the 6 founders graduated from UGA. They love SEC football. So go try them out and tell the people wherever you buy your alcohol to come check it out. So that's ASW Distillery. All right,
By the
Coach
way,
had to run with his internet dealio. That's fine because we only had one more cluster, Brent. So we're going to wrap this up. Tell
one
me
more
what
thing to
catches
finish
your-
up though
Go ahead.
before we do that. I bet he was about to say of what that non-conference work does for them in their conference games, because they've been very good in the MAC because their non-conference has been so tough. It's like going back down and getting back to their level makes them that much better. But anyway, all right, let's go. Last cluster.
Last cluster of games here is Northern Illinois at Kentucky. The Wildcats a 26.5-point favorite. That game's 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN2 on Saturday. We do have another SEC game, but it is Vanderbilt, so maybe that's arguable. At Alabama, 40.5-point favorites. The Tide are in that game, 7:30 Eastern time on the SEC network. New Mexico goes to LSU. LSU favored by 31.5. Is that fourth quarter a turning point for LSU? Do we look back maybe next year and say that's where the belief changed with them? I think it could be. It felt like an inflection point, their fourth quarter against Mississippi State. And finally, South Carolina needs some good news. 22.5-point favorite at home against Charlotte. I mentioned LSU there. Anything catching your eye, whether it be Kentucky or Bama or Vandy?
All right, so one, Kentucky's played like garbage, and they're 3-0. Like they've just not played well. Levis only has one big-time throw, 5 turn-worthy plays. The running game is non-existent. Their long run is 18 yards. They only have 7 runs of 10 yards or more. Like their offense is going to have to catch up because they go play Ole Miss next week.
Didn't we say this on some summer podcasts? I know I did. That Levis, let's slow it down a little bit.
Well, and new play caller, no Rodriguez, like entirely new offensive line, just different for him. 2. Bold prediction of the mid sort of quarter part of the season. I think Vanderbilt covers in this game. And I think Vanderbilt is not the seller in the East. I don't think they finish last in the East.
South Carolina or Missouri?
Either.
Whoever loses their game?
I think they're going to beat them both. Could potentially beat them both. I'm a
I'm
believer in the Fighting Clark Lees.
Yeah.
Like, look, I put this out on Twitter earlier, but in the last 3 seasons, they've had one overall game grade above 80. In the last 3 seasons, they've had 2 this year. So some actual improvement from Vanderbilt. LSU, I think you've made a 100% correct point. That could be a turning point. And I actually gained a lot more respect for Brian Kelly this week. The answer that he gave about Jaden Daniels in a press conference, talking about how the tug and pull there between letting him run and be a playmaker because he's electric as that versus, a pocket passer, and the why. And they look at and they break down, hey, why did you break the pocket here? Is because nobody was open, or is it because you just wanted to run? Like, so the dynamic there, because of how good he is as a runner. I mean, he's the highest graded Power 5 QB in terms of rush grade because he's electric as a runner.
The biggest thing with him, and it looks like Coach Donnan is popping back in here. The biggest thing with Daniels at LSU, he's not throwing interceptions, but he's still slow on some of his reads. And receivers are open for LSU, and he's just not throwing it fast enough. And that's when he's running out of the pocket. But he's not making critical mistakes, and that's how this could be an inflection point for LSU.
Hey, Coach. Welcome back, Coach.
Sorry about that. I don't know. You started talking about something that made my internet mad, so I don't know. But anyway,
all right, so Coach,
we're closing it up here. What do I need to give you a little factoid on?
I just wanted to see if you agree with me. I'm going my bold prediction: Vanderbilt covers against Alabama.
40 and
is not the last team in the East this year. That's my quarter of the season prediction.
I can tell you that. I mean, Vanderbilt's got a heck of a shot against both Missouri and South Carolina. I agree. Whether they cover that, I don't know. Alabama hadn't shown me much with their offensive line or their receivers, but 40.5. But, you got 2 big spreads there, Kent and Alabama against Vanderbilt. But, hey, should be fun this week to see some big games. I mean, Florida, to me, it'd be a big upset if Florida wins that game.
Brandon, Jimmy, South Carolina thoughts quickly, other than Vandy maybe better than them?
I was shocked watching the game. Like 3rd and 6 on the opening drive, and you go to the Wildcat run. And then, it was like, hey, we don't belong on the field. Like they had 3 guys We talked about them last week. Jaheim Bell, Juice Wells, and Josh Van that can make plays. Those guys got 3
deep at once.
No, they did it once. Outside of that, Van had 1 target. Wells had 1 target. Just throwing the ball. And they didn't at all. That was just peculiar. I was beyond shocked at that game plan and how they structured that game.
They were mesmerized. They looked like they were just totally. And then, we knew Rattler would take the gas. I mean, he's not going to change. He can't throw the ball when he gets pressured. I mean, that's just basically it. But nothing against the kid. He got a good arm. They come out and threw the first one to the tight end. I don't think they threw another one to him. But their game plan kind of evaporated over. Everything went down when the minor sports came out there on the field.
And I'll end this show with how I mentioned it on Tuesday. That's what the champions were. That women's basketball team runs South Carolina, so don't be ushering them off the field if they were included with that. Exactly. You should hope you can get invited to their game. Yes. Shane Beamer.
Yeah, respect to Don Staley.
You watch it, Fighting 49ers from Charlotte. They'll go in there and move the ball. I mean, they've had, they got beat by Bill and Mary and Florida Atlantic, but they beat Georgia State last week by 1. Georgia State's got a good team. Now they got to play Coastal Carolina. Probably going to start the season 0-4, and they've been in every game they played. They just hadn't won one.
That didn't work out well. You can ask Scott Frost. Hey, that's Around the League here from UGAsports.com. Thanks for watching and listening. Thanks to our sponsors, Connor Grading and Landscaping and ASW Distillery. And as always, Coach Donnan, thanks for joining. Brent Rollins, same. I'm Dayne Young. We'll see you all next week here on Around